Hello, welcome to module number 4 on IT funding decisions. In this particular part of the discussion, we're going to talk about IT investment value pathways. So what are some of the paths or avenues or areas that firms choose to spend money on when they're investing in IT? One question you may be asking or wondering is, before we get into this discussion on pathways, is how much should companies spend overall on IT? What should be the total budget? Now, one metric used for this typically is basically a percentage of revenue. So if you go to the Gartner Group research web portal, which you have access to, you can find statistics on how much industries on average tend to spend with respect to IT as a percentage of revenue. You can see here, just as an example, the difference between retail and wholesale and these other publishing and internet service industries, which I assume because they're more technology intensive, they tend to spend more as a percentage of revenue. So if you're looking for a ballpark on what your company should be spending, look at some industry statistics on what the averages are. What do companies tend to spend on average in your industry as a percentage of revenue? So just some background on this topic of IT spending. Certainly these types of decisions are critical given the dollar amounts and the potential impacts on IT spending decisions, and the fact that poor decisions can lead to major negative consequences. It could take us a minute to get on Google and look at some of the latest examples and highly publicized cases of companies who've made poor decisions on spending on certain projects in IT, which have led to major problems or consequences. So I think a key management skill here is recognizing opportunities for investing in IT. So where should we be investing? That's something I think we've touched on some already in the course. And then most importantly, or more importantly, in this module, how do you go about evaluating IT investment priorities? Given projects A, B, C, and D, and you can only fund 2 of them, how do you decide which 2 get funded? What type of metric, what type of yardstick do you use to evaluate these projects? Which 2 do you weed out? Which 2 do you fund? So that's a key question we're going to try to get to in this discussion. I did want to mention, before jumping into that any further, the fact that when companies spend money on technology, certainly in the 80s and 90s, spending was going through the roof. Companies are spending lots of money on technology, but there wasn't necessarily a correlation seen between spending and productivity gains, or value gained by companies. And so you can't expect to spend money and automatically to see dramatic results from that. And so, again, I think we've talked about some of this already in the course. We've seen that IT investments pay off when those investments are tightly linked to strategy or productivity levers. We've talked about IT investments have to be accompanied by management innovation and business practices or organizational innovation. So it really gets back to how you spend money on IT as to whether you get payoff or not from that in terms of value back to the company, business gain, increased productivity. So the term the IT productivity paradox was coined just to reflect the fact that one would expect with all the spending going on technology that there would be a correlation with productivity, but studies didn't show that. Again, it got back to how specific companies were investing wisely with IT, as we talked about. Okay, so let's talk about how can IT investments be categorized. What are some of the different classifications? I think this is an important thing to look at. Number one, it shows that there are different areas that firms need to invest in IT within organizations, typically. There may be different motives behind different types of IT investments. And I think there are also implications for, depending on the type of IT investment, there are different implications for how you go about justifying these IT investments, which we'll talk about. So let's talk about IT value pathways first, and then what's the difference between revenue enhancing versus cost reducing IT projects. Then we'll allude to the VW model, how they break up or classify their IT projects into 3 different types. So let's start with IT value pathways. This is in the chapter that you read. As the authors mentioned, this really deals with 6 mental templates for why organizations invest in IT. So what are 6 reasons why companies or organizations invest in IT? So let's hit those here real quickly. First off, some projects are simply mandated. You have to do them due to external sources, maybe regulation, government regulation, maybe HIPAA. We're going to look at the Maine Medicaid case. But certain IT projects are simply mandated. Technology renewal type projects really have to do with what I refer to as infrastructure renewal. So replacing old servers, upgrading the network, upgrading security software. And these are typically areas that companies need to budget for. Many of you get company-issued laptops or desktops, and you know that there's a replacement cycle. Every few years, you get a new one. And so these, in a sense, these types of investments are, they're mandated, but just simply that you need to keep up. The infrastructure needs to be renewed periodically. So that's just one type of IT investment. Companies also invest in IT for business process improvement. That's pretty straightforward. Or they may do it out of competitive necessity. If they don't invest, it's going to put us at a competitive disadvantage. I think you could argue online banking in the late 90s was something new and cool. I actually jumped banks, switched banks because this new bank had this capability. But as soon as it became apparent that if you're in banking, this became a competitive necessity type of investment. If you weren't in this space, if you didn't have online banking, then it put you at a competitive disadvantage. Another reason why companies invest in technology to put them at competitive advantage. Of course, Carr doesn't quite agree with this. So investing in technologies that you think are going to put you ahead of your competition. And finally, options generators. And these would be the types of projects that maybe are more speculative, more risky in nature, with future unanticipated benefits, but yet where you think you want to get on the bus, so to speak, invest in this technology to. The example I use is drone technology because you foresee potentially great future benefit, but you're not exactly sure how it's going to work out. So again, these are some of the different types of reasons why companies invest in IT according to this one author. You can also classify IT project investments in terms of revenue enhancing or cost reducing types of investments. So revenue enhancing IT projects are those who, if successful, will help improve organizational revenue. Obviously, I'm being a little bit redundant here. So for example, a CRM system, the idea that you're going to be better touch with customers, relationship management, and better understand particular customers' buying trends and patterns, and so you can push more products out to that customer. Versus cost-reducing IT projects that are those that are typically labor-saving projects. So you invest in these projects and you may reduce your personnel, you may cut labor costs. If you compare these two types of IT investment projects, typically I think in terms of upside potential, revenue-enhancing projects tend to have more upside potential than cost-reducing projects. But in terms of immediacy of results, I think that cost-reducing type of IT investments, you tend to get quicker results when you can cut costs. There may be a lag effect when implementing a revenue-enhancing type of IT project. How about in an economic downturn? Which of these two types of projects are more favorable? Some might argue cost-reducing types of projects. If you're in the mode of there's an economic downturn, you need to cut costs, you need to help out with cash flow, that may be a better type of investment. How about quantifying the benefits. Which of these types of projects are easier, would be easier to quantify the benefits. And I think there's a strong argument that cost-reducing types of IT projects might be easier to quantify in terms of the benefits of these types of projects. All right, VW uses a model, a classification model for their IT projects. That they typically have a portfolio of projects. They have what they call NPV projects. Those are IT projects that demonstrate a clear return on investment. They also have mandatory projects, projects that must be undertaken regardless of NPV, oftentimes due to external forces. And then what they call option creating projects is a third category, speculative and risky in nature with future unanticipated benefits. This would be similar to the options generator type project under the IT values pathway we just looked at. So I think this is healthy. You know, when you look at this, how VW classifies different types of projects, because clearly if their mode of operation for evaluating IT projects was simply that project or those projects with the highest net present value win, if that's their criteria or the yardstick, then obviously they're going to miss out on certain mandatory projects that maybe have no NPV or you can't even gauge that, but yet you still need to invest in those projects. So, or if they're only investing in projects that can demonstrate a positive net present value, they might not invest in option creating projects because they're speculative and the future benefits may not yet be realized. Okay, so I think VW can give us a good example of why it makes sense and why it's helpful to realize that there are different types of IT investments. Not all of them are going to be investments where you can have a clear demonstrated net present value, or clear return on investment. And there are certainly types of projects you simply have to invest in because you really don't have a choice, or there may be other types of IT investments that hey, we think we need to do this. We think we want to jump on board this technology because we think they're going to be great benefits in the future for us. We're just not sure of what they are. So it's almost a little bit of R&D. So, okay, that's it for this part, and we'll pick up later. Thank you.